Chapter 236 Martial Soul Fusion, Dragon Cry of Destiny. Their martial soul seemed powerful, but that was nothing compared to his 8-ring self. This was especially so because Zhong Liren was an evil soul master, and had the strength to challenge even a normal titled Douluo. However, Zhong Liren began to feel that something was amiss from the moment their hands clasped together. Their auras were starting to rise exponentially, and the blinding golden light bursting from their bodies was tinged with faint dragon roars. Wang Qiu's eyes had become entirely golden at this point. Huo Yuao's eye of destiny was golden, but his own eyes had become dark blue in color, a hue that was filled with a chilling eeriness. How could this aura belong to two people who only had 5 and 6 soul rings? Their soul power undulations were close to, or had already reached that of a 7-ring soul sage. Huo Yuao quickly calmed down after his momentary shock. He was very experienced with martial soul fusion, and he swiftly analyzed their martial soul fusion's strengths and weaknesses. Relative to his martial soul fusion with Wang Donga, their current fusion greatly amplified each other in terms of both strength and soul power, to the point where it exceeded his connection with Wang Donga through the had-on power. However, he had no idea what kind of martial soul fusion skills he would create with Wang Qiu, but there could only be 2. He was also positive that these martial soul fusion skills would absolutely be assault-based. He had 4 martial soul fusion skills with Wang Donga, and that was considered a lot more versatile. Huo Yuao analyzed the pros and cons, but he couldn't be sure. However, he was sure that his fusion with Wang Qiu wasn't that far off from his fusion with Wang Donga. This was an unexpected surprise. His confidence to survive this ordeal was greatly boosted with this martial soul fusion, as Zhong Liren had lost many beast souls during his previous battle. Zhong Liren grunted coldly and raised his staff into the air as a horde of beast souls swarmed out in an instant, pouncing right towards Huo Yuao and Wang Qiu. His ghost shadow leopard emperor vanished soundlessly into the air. Or rather, it disappeared within the mass of beast souls. Huo Yuao raised his right hand, and a dark blue longsword appeared in his palms. Unparalleled chill, Emperor Sword. Initially, he would have to adjust his soul power and wait for a while after he unleashed his Emperor Sword for a single strike, while this move consumed much of his soul power. However, his martial soul fusion with Wang Qiu allowed him to nearly solidify his Emperor Sword to the point where it was almost physically material. 3 beams of light erupted from Huo Yuao's 3 eyes at the same time. His light of destiny felt as if it was going to absorb all light around it, and his purplish golden spiritual shock struck Zhong Liren at almost the same time. Zhong Liren had already been wary of the vertical eye on Huo Yuao's head, hence he had been preparing to defend himself against it this entire time. His body transformed into grey mist as these 3 beams appeared, as he released his martial soul true body yet again. However, he didn't understand Huo Yuao's abilities at all. His transformation into mist could weaken normal attacks against him greatly, but Huo Yuao's 3 beams of light weren't normal attacks at all. Zhong Liren's mist was formidable, but it defended against physical attacks in the end, and could partially protect him against soul power attacks at most. However, there was no way he could defend himself against spiritual attacks. The light of destiny was the first to reach him, and it instantly painted his grey mist golden. His martial soul true body froze in an instant. He didn't feel like he was hit at all, but an intense insecurity and uneasiness surfaced in his heart. The 2 streaks of spiritual shock came immediately afterwards. Huo Yuao's spiritual power was his strongest ability. His martial soul was fused with Wang Qiu's at this moment, and this spiritual power amplification caused his spiritual power to rise by yet another level. Those 2 purplish golden beams of light were almost material. Zhong Liren was momentarily dazed when he was struck by the light of destiny, and his descent into bad fortune immediately took effect. He felt as if 2 tremendous hammers had crashed against the deepest parts of his spirit while he was in his weakest state. He released a stifled grunt, and was directly knocked out of his martial soul true body form. He changed back into human form and plummeted onto the ground as his mind became temporarily empty and blank. Zhong Liren's spirit had sustained an acute shock, and this meant his control over his beast souls was hindered. The beast souls lunging towards Huo Yuao and Wang Qiu became disorganized and chaotic. Huo Yuao was clear that this was a fight to the death, so he didn't hold back at all. The vertical eye on his forehead flickered with brilliant light before the light receded. The beast souls that were in front of them interacted with this light when it appeared, and every single one was dispelled. The aura was so brilliant that everything else around it dimmed for a moment. It was a spectacular sight. Intense golden lights were surrounded and orbited by specks of purple-colored starlight, and only flashed once before Zhong Liren howled agonizingly. He was an 8-ring soul Douluo, and he had already suffered a shock before this. He arched his head backwards and placed his hands on his skull in pain. Yes, Huo Yuao had connected a second spiritual shock to his first one. However, this was different from the first, as his second strike came from his eye of destiny. He was amplified by his martial soul fusion with Wang Qiu, and Huo Yuao had explosively unleashed his overloaded spiritual power. The eye of destiny closed by itself after this hit, while Huo Yuao's face turned ghastly pale. He had used spiritual shock 2 times in a row at such intensity, it caused an acute negative backlash to his spiritual C. However, reality proved that his method was effective. Zhong Liren took the second hit from spiritual shock, and he could no longer control his beast souls. The swarming beast souls immediately became disorganized and aimless as they scattered in all directions, alleviating much of the pressure on Huo Yuao and Wang Qiu. Wang Qiu's golden dragon spear swung out and glowed with endless golden light as every single beast soul was forced back. Her golden dragon spear released a spear light that was almost a meter long because of the martial soul fusion, and there was a feeling like she represented a force of justice so strong that no unholy beings dared to come near. The ghost shadow leopard emperor ambushed her from the darkness, but even it was repelled, and the 2 of them only took several steps back this time. Huo Yuao unleashed his Emperor Sword. He supported Wang Qiu's efforts with streak after streak of sword light, and he began to chant a curse that was impossible to discern before peculiar spiritual undulations began to ripple from his body. Wang Qiu continued slashing around with her golden dragon spear as she turned around towards him. Her eyes were filled with astonishment. She could clearly feel that Huo Yuao's spiritual undulations were extremely sinister, and so strong that they seemed to resonate with her very soul. The dark blue light receded, and Huo Yuao's Emperor Sword vanished at the same time, while his eyes were replaced with a dash of grey. It was a color filled with barrenness and emptiness, but this greyness only flashed once and disappeared before his eyes sparkled and turned white. This was a hue that was charged with a saintly aura, and his incantations became hastier and more hurried. The beast souls that were already disorganized in the sky gradually slowed down as they heard this chant, and every single one turned their eyes toward him. The beast souls' eyes no longer seemed hysterical or violent. Instead, their eyes were filled with an indescribable delight, and this included even the ghost shadow leopard emperor, which slowed down and no longer attacked. It was different from the other beast souls, as the leopard emperor still retained some of its original willpower, and its eyes sparkled with uncertainty and doubt. Wang Qiu didn't know what Huo Yuao was doing, but he could tell that this was advantageous for them. Right at this moment, Zhong Liren recovered on the other side. 2 spiritual shocks, one after another, and the bad luck that plagued his body affected him severely, and blood was pouring from his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Wounds on a spiritual level were much more frightening than physical wounds, and Zhong Liren had never expected a youngster like Huo Yuao to possess such incredible power. He had been wary and vigilant, but he was still struck anyway. He had recovered by now, and he immediately felt something was wrong. He glanced at Huo Yuao while his body glowed with a grey layer of light. This was a type of spiritual protection barrier, and it was typically used when capturing beast souls to prevent a backlash, but he still activated it at this moment. Zhong Liren's eyes met Huo Yuao's white eyes, and he suddenly felt his spirit quiver as an intensely ominous feeling rose from his heart. Shit. He immediately raised the staff in his hand subconsciously, and relied on his powerful senses to withdraw all the beast souls that he had released as fast as he could. Perhaps he was affected by bad luck, but he was just that one instant too slow. A circle of pure white light rippled from Huo Yuao's head. A strange jittering could be heard from the beast souls wherever this light reached. This white radiance brushed past their bodies, but it didn't harm them at all. These beast souls were originally blood-colored, but they quickly turned white before they turned pale and dissipated into the air. Huo Yuao's face was paper pale at this point. He stumbled backwards, and would have crumbled to the ground if Wang Qiu hadn't been holding onto him. The only beast soul that wasn't purified from the white light was Zhong Liren's origin beast soul, the ghost shadow leopard emperor. However, the ghost shadow leopard emperor began to exude large amounts of brown mist as the white light shone upon it, and it howled painfully as it was drawn back into Zhong Liren's staff. Zhong Liren howled agonizingly as well, and vomited a huge pool of blood. There was only fear in his eyes as he stared at Huo Yuao, as if he was staring at the devil. You're also an evil soul master. How is that possible? How can you purify the power of spirits? Who are you? Are you the Holy Son? Huro Yuao was in such a feeble state that he couldn't really talk anymore. What he had unleashed was the light of purification that he had inherited from Electrolux's necromancy. The previous 2 strikes were meant to give him time, and the light of destiny was to curse the opponent with bad fortune, which was also equivalent to bestowing good fortune upon himself. If the beasts had been under Zhong Liren's control, his light of destiny probably wouldn't have worked. In the end, the gap in their cultivations was still huge, and Huro Yuao definitely didn't have an advantage even in terms of spiritual power. He had succeeded, relying on the fact that his opponent didn't really understand his abilities, and exerting himself far beyond his usual standards. He had relied on his boosted spiritual power from the fusion with Wang Qiu to forcibly cleanse the great majority of Zhong Liren's beast souls. There had been multiple 10,000-year beast souls among that group. If he hadn't been successful, there would have been no way he or Wang Qiu could defend themselves against frightening attacks from so many beast souls. The light of destiny's judgment had aided him yet again. Zhong Liren was completely rooted to the spot in fright at this moment. I'm not an evil soul master. I've been sent by the heavens to take care of evil soul masters like you. Huro Yuao forcibly stabilized himself and tried his best to keep his balance with the spiritual power that Wang Qiu was sending over. He couldn't display any weakness at this point. Wang Qiu raised the golden dragon spear high into the air. The spear had burst with golden light and her 6 soul rings sparkled alternately. The identical golden light on both their bodies suddenly became intense, and she turned sideways and leaned into Huro Yuao's embrace. A miraculous scene happened. Peculiar lights began to contort the moment their bodies were plastered together, and everything within 100 meters around them became golden in color, while an enormous golden vertical eye hovered in midair. Huro Yuao's body seemed to disintegrate into a million golden beams that swept onto Wang Qiu's body. Every single beam would leave a brilliant and colorful streak on Wang Qiu's body, while a suit of armor gradually appeared on Wang Qiu's body wherever they passed. The chest plate appeared first. Radiant ice crystal patterns shimmered on the chest plate and began to extend all around her. What was even more peculiar was that a vertical eye actually emerged on Wang Qiu's forehead. It was the Eye of Destiny, identical to the one that belonged to Huro Yuao. The eye sparkled with golden light, and one could tell upon closer inspection that the golden vertical eye's lights belonged to Huro Yuao. The golden armor with ice crystal patterns swiftly covered Wang Qiu's entire body, and her aura climbed exponentially. Bright dragon roars could be heard continuously as a projection of a golden dragon began circling around her body. The Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion was imprinted on her back, and this picture was identical to the tattoo that usually appeared on Huro Yuao's body, where the scorpion's tail reached her hip. Wang Qiu was like a war goddess as she stood there clad in armor. She pointed her golden dragon spear forward, and the tremendous golden vertical eye in the sky descended as a beam of golden light. Wang Qiu's body grew larger by about 30% under the golden light's radiance, while the golden dragon orbiting her immediately became almost material. Wang Qiu tapped on the ground with her foot as dragon roars rang out, and she left a series of after images behind as she rushed Zhong Liren. Her golden dragon spear stabbed out in the middle of a deafening dragon's roar. The golden radiance suddenly withdrew as she lashed out, and the golden dragon spear's tip became an elegant and transparent rose gold color as space split like 2 lines of water as the spear tore through the air, arriving before Zhong Liren in the blink of an eye. There was only one thought in Zhong Liren's head at this moment, after he had suffered great losses and the psychological impact of the light of purification. These 2 youngsters were here to ruin everything that he had. The light of purification was like a calamity to him. Furthermore, he was still plagued with the light of destiny that had brought him great misfortune. Then there was this martial soul fusion skill that looked as formidable as a king. All this came together to fill Zhong Liren's heart with fear. Even evil soul masters feared death. He had lost so many beast souls in this ordeal, and his strength had been massively reduced. He didn't dare to meet Wang Qiu with force anymore. Zhong Liren transformed into a ball of mist in a flash, and he bolted into the distance at lightning speed as he released his martial soul true body. He was admittedly incredibly quick in this mist form. The spear's rose gold light gradually receded, and the armor on Wang Qiu's body slowly broke down and reverted into flowing streaks of light. The space around her began to contort as these streaks transformed back into Huro Yuao once more. Huro Yuao trembled when he reappeared and began to fall. Wang Qiu hurriedly went to support him and whispered, "How are you feeling?" Zhong Liren had been frightened away, but the truth was that Huro Yuao was now extremely weak and had overdrafted his spirit and soul power. He had practically raced against time with his 3 strikes of spiritual shock. To him, spiritual power consumption wasn't a problem, but the problem was how quickly he used it in succession. 3 continuous instances drew too much from his spiritual sea, to the point where a crack seemed like it was going to appear, and Huro Yuao's own spirit had sustained a powerful impact. He had greatly amplified Wang Qiu's abilities when he transformed into that armor, and there was no doubt that this was a martial soul fusion skill that they had yet to give a name to. However, would they face off against an 8-ring soul Douluo with just that martial soul fusion skill? The answer was no. Huro Yuao was too weak at this point, and their martial soul fusion skills amplification wasn't as powerful as it looked on the outside. Wang Qiu contributed most of it. Furthermore, they realized that their soul power was consumed at an alarming rate when they unleashed this martial soul fusion skill. That single transformation and strike had consumed roughly 30% of their soul power. This meant that they could only use this martial soul fusion skill 3 times, and they would revert to normal after 3 strikes. Zhong Liren didn't have his beast souls to assist him, but he could probably take 3 hits with his cultivation. Huro Yuao and Wang Qiu had astonished him too much, and his underestimation from the start became overestimation in the end, and he let this opportunity to kill them slip away. "I'm all right. Let's get out of here." Huro Yuao spoke softly as he closed his eyes. He didn't know if Zhong Liren would suddenly think it through and make his way back here, so leaving this place was something they absolutely had to do. "Okay." Wang Qiu acknowledged. She carried Huro Yuao and lengthened her stride as she sped in a certain direction. What made Huro Yuao angsty was that he was a man, but Wang Qiu was carrying him on her shoulders. This girl was just too strong, to the point where he felt as light as a feather. The ride wasn't that turbulent, and Huro Yuao was gradually recovering, but he still didn't feel so good inside. He tried his best to stabilize his spiritual sea. His spirit had been wounded to a certain degree, and he would need about half a month to return to normal. Zhong Liren is gone. I wonder how Wang Donga and the others are doing. Huro Yuao closed his eyes and tried to picture Wang Donga. Wang Qiu's image suddenly surfaced from the deepest parts of his mind. Their martial soul fusion was the most substantial reason why they managed to scare Zhong Liren away before. Without their martial soul fusion and without Wang Qiu's support and amplification, Huro Yuao wouldn't have received such an intense negative backlash, while his 2 spiritual shocks wouldn't have been so powerful. The final move that made Zhong Liren turn tail and run was their martial soul fusion skill. How can my martial soul fuse with hers? Even though this fusion is different from my fusion with Donga, she's still a little too similar to Donga. They look so alike, and they can both fuse their martial souls with mine. Huro Yuao had never heard of a soul master who was able to undergo martial soul fusion with 2 other soul masters at the same time from all his lessons at Shrek Academy. There was no question that he had invented something new once again. Thoughts were spinning in Huro Yuao's head, and Wang Qiu felt the same way. She had always believed that she was the strongest amongst all the students in Shrek Academy that were around her level, and she included all the students from the inner courtyard who had less than 7 rings in this analysis. However, Huro Yuao had executed 3 spiritual shocks in a row and triggered the halo of purification with an incantation. Her mentality had changed a little because of these things. Would I be able to take those 3 spiritual shocks if I were Zhong Liren? Wang Qiu didn't know the answer to that. However, she realized that Huro Yuao was far more powerful than she had thought. He was still a distance away from her in terms of soul power, and only had 5 soul rings, but despite all that, his overall abilities weren't weak at all. Wang Qiu hadn't forgotten about those 3 stationary soul cannon shells, and she had personally witnessed the immense power that 2 of those shells possessed. At least, she understood that while she had mighty offensive capabilities, there was no way she could launch an attack at that degree of strength. Wang Qiu ran 5 kilometers in one go. They encountered some soul beasts along the way, but these soul beasts didn't attack them, scampering away to avoid the 2 of them. Perhaps they were frightened away by Wang Qiu's intimidating aura. "All right, let's take a break. Put me down." Huo Yuao had recovered some of his spiritual power, and the intense headache had receded. Wang Qiwa put him down as she grabbed her golden dragon spear and surveyed her surroundings with razor-sharp eyes to make sure that this location was safe. Huo Yuao lay down on the ground and exhaled deeply. It didn't feel so good to be carried on someone's shoulders. After all, Wang Qiwa, can you still find a way back? We have to rendezvous with our companions. The company will be in trouble if the three brothers decide to gang up on them. Wang Qiwa turned and glanced at him as she said, it doesn't make a difference even if we meet up with the others in your current state. You should try to recover first. Plus, I can't remember the way back, so we can only find our way slowly. Huo Yuao naturally knew that her words made a lot of sense, and nodded while sitting down cross-legged and beginning to replenish his soul power. Wang Qiwa stood by his side and protected him. Huo Yuao hadn't consumed that much soul power, so it didn't take long for him to recover. However, his spiritual wound had to be nurtured slowly. Huo Yuao managed to completely stabilize his spiritual sea and regain all his soul power, and he leapt to his feet at once. Do you need to rest? Do you need to rest? He asked Wang Qiwa. Wang Qiwa shook her head. Huo Yuao said, let's go, then. Let's get back to the others as fast as we can. He immediately began racing in the direction that they came from as he spoke. Wang Qiwa caught up to him quickly. Huo Yuao, are you in such a hurry to return to the others because of the company, or because of her? Wang Qiwa suddenly asked as they ran. Huo Yuao naturally knew which her she was referring to, and he shot an astonished glance at Wang Qiwa. This question totally didn't conform with her typical style. A little bit of both. I want to get back for the company, and also for Donga. These two things aren't mutually exclusive. Huo Yuao answered. Wang Qiwa pursued the issue and said, the main reason is still her, right? Huo Yuao frowned and said, why do you ask? Wang Qiwa changed tack and said, let's give it a name. Huo Yuao wasn't used to her style of suddenly changing topics, and was momentarily at a loss as he said, give what a name? Wang Qiwa said, let's give our martial soul fusion skill a name. Huo Yuao finally realized what she was referring to and said, yes, we should give it a name. I didn't expect the two of us to have a martial soul fusion skill, and our martial souls fused after the first time our soul powers came into contact. That's unimaginable. Wang Qiwa replied coldly, what's so unimaginable about that? Are you telling me that only you and her can have martial soul fusion skills? Huo Yuao was a little speechless as he said, and yet you tell me that Donga feels hostile toward you. Aren't you the same toward her? I really don't understand. The two of you look so similar, but you guys are more intimate because of that. Instead, the two of you start antagonizing each other. You girls, what are you thinking about? Wang Qiwa's eyes became a little more tender as she gazed into the distance and said, you will understand one day. Huo Yuao shook his head in exasperation. The two of them quieted down and continued on their way. After a few minutes, Huo Yuao said, our martial soul fusion skill can be called the Dragon Roar of Destiny. How about that? I originally thought that my twin martial souls would create two martial soul fusion skills with you, but I didn't expect all three martial souls to fuse together. I can feel that our fusion skill is more powerful than any one of my 4 fusion skills with Donga. However, just one instance consumes too much soul power, and Zhong Liren escaped too quickly, so we didn't get to test its true strength. Wang Qiwa muttered the name that Huo Yuao had suggested over and over again. Dragon Roar of Destiny. Dragon Roar of Destiny. Can it be that this is my destiny? I didn't think. She finally paused when she said those words, as if she realized she had said something she wasn't supposed to say. You didn't think about what? Huo Yuao continued asking. Wang Qiwa shook her head and said, nothing. Let's just call it the Dragon Roar of Destiny. The reason why we consume so much soul power is because every strike after our fusion carries a peculiar power, and I'm willing to call that judgment Destiny's judgment. The effects will be extremely terrifying if someone is struck by Destiny's judgment. That evil soul master has 8 soul rings, but I know that we would probably have taken half his life away if I had managed to stab him. Huo Yuao asked suspiciously, Destiny's judgment? That may be the effect that my Eye of Destiny carries, but how different is it when it's used along with your attacks? Wang Qiwa said plainly, I can feel it. That power of judgment is awakened by the Dragon Roar of Destiny, and its effects will remain on the target for eternity if it strikes someone. Furthermore, it can only be misfortune. Huo Yuao drew a cold breath. Misfortune for the rest of one's life. No wonder Wang Qiwa thinks that Destiny's judgment is exceedingly formidable when used with her golden dragon spear. Having to live with terribly bad luck for the rest of one's life is more painful than death. If Zhong Liren hadn't run away fast enough, he would probably have been the first person to have a taste of a lifetime of misfortune. Wang Qiwa said, the truth is that I don't think we only have one martial soul fusion skill. The Dragon Roar of Destiny can work in reverse. If you have enough spiritual power, you can become the main attacking strength. That way, I will transform into armor on your body, and I will amplify all your abilities while passing some of my own to you. I believe your attacks would also contain Destiny's judgment. Huo Yuao stared at her with a strange look and said, how do you know all this? We have never experimented before. Wang Qiwa glanced at him, but there was a tinge of doubt in her eyes. You also possess an ultimate martial soul. Do you not know about ultimate innate skills? Huo Yuao was momentarily stunned. Ultimate innate skills? What's that? Wang Qiwa seemed like she had a revelation as she said, I understand now. Your ultimate innate skill is the extreme cold from your ice element. It seems like your martial soul is still slightly inferior to mine. We who possess ultimate martial souls will normally have innate skills like soul beasts sometimes do. Your ultimate innate skill must be the pure and extreme cold. Or, you haven't unlocked it yet. Huo Yuao was even more confused. Your ability to immediately understand the profundities of our martial soul fusion is related to your ultimate innate skill? Wang Qiwa nodded and said, I have 3 innate skills. Golden Dragon's Pride, Golden Dragon's Perception, and the... She stopped talking, and didn't reveal her last innate skill. With Golden Dragon's Perception, I possess an almost 3-dimensional perception. It's a little bit difficult to understand when I talk about it, but simply put, it just means that I can perceive some things that you're unable to see, and I will develop a deep understanding of the things that I perceive. You've already seen what the Golden Dragon's Pride is and what it does. It relies on the energies of the Golden Dragon's lineage, and I am able to temporarily control a single soul beast when I'm using Golden Dragon's Pride. I can maintain it for a certain period of time as long as I don't attack it. Huo Yuao was astonished. Even a soul beast at the Dark Golden Terraclaw Bear's level can be controlled through Golden Dragon's Pride. Wang Qiwa nodded and said, I know you would doubt me if I didn't explain this to you. Please keep my secret. All right. Huo Yuao immediately agreed. He had a lot of secrets himself, and Wang Qiwa telling him about it meant she had decided to trust him. Their relationship had clearly become a lot more intimate after this battle. It wasn't just because the strange martial soul fusion between them had occurred. More importantly, Huo Yuao had reached out to save her, and that melted the iciness in her heart, so they could become even closer. Their intimacy was developing purely as friends, and there wasn't anything else. They both had exceptional memories. Huo Yuao had spiritual detection, while Wang Qiwa had her golden dragon's perception. As they darted through the forest, they actually managed to follow their original path as they gradually came back to where they had last clashed with the 3 brothers. Wait. Huo Yuao called out to Wang Qiwa, and paused in his tracks. Wang Qiwa stopped when she heard his voice, and gave him an inquiring look. Help me use spiritual detection to search for them. I have a feeling we are very close. He grabbed Wang Qiwa naturally as he spoke, as if he were grabbing Wang Donga's hands on a normal day. They had already done this not too long ago. However, Huo Yuao felt his heart skip a beat when he clasped Wang Qiwa's hands once more. He turned towards Wang Qiwa subconsciously and realized that she was staring right back at him. Wang Qiwa and Wang Donga's looked almost identical, but there were many things about them that were vastly different. For example, their hands were very distinct. They both had slim and tender hands, but Wang Donga's hands were always so cold and icy, and she gave him a feeling as if he had to take care of her. Wang Qiwa's hands were warm, possibly even warmer than Huo Yuao's own hands, and he felt as if he were holding onto a gentle oven and being warmed up. Huo Yuao found it hard to imagine that these warm, tender, and petite hands could possess such frightening explosive power, and this feeling intensified the more he held onto her. They had held hands before, when they were fighting Zhongluren. However, they had been facing a powerful enemy, and they didn't have time to think about all this. All they thought about was how to give everything they had to defeat their adversary. At this moment, Hua Yuao only wanted to borrow Wang Qiu's strength to boost his spiritual detection strength, but there was an indescribable feeling that rose from his heart when they actually held hands once more. Hua Yuao almost let go of her hand subconsciously. He already had Dongger, so how could he lead other girls on? Even though he was true to his conscience, he didn't want other girls to misunderstand. Perhaps he was just thinking too much, but he wanted to prevent anything that could affect his relationship with Dongger. However, just when he wanted to let go, Wang Qiu grabbed his hand tighter and infused her fearsome golden dragon soul power into his body. Their soul power immediately fused, and Hua Yuao's abilities were instantly amplified. Don't think so much. Let's find them as soon as possible. Wang Qiu muttered coldly, as if she could see into Hua Yuao's inner thoughts. Hua Yuao felt a blush come over his face. Perhaps he really was thinking too much. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.